Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. Not with me, as always, is Jim Stam, who is out sick. We had to call in a pinch hitter tonight, and it's our old friend, Ethan Smith, who has been busy just working, living life, dealing with his cat, all that stuff, kind of checking out a little bit from the scene, huh?
Just a little bit. I feel like once the weather gets a little warmer and, opening day gets closer and closer, I think it'll come back to me. What's that Celine Dion song? It's all coming back to me now. Hopefully it doesn't get copyrighted, but I feel like that's just going to play in my head whenever it all comes back.
Well, if you could get copyright trouble on YouTube, believe me, it'll be me. They shut our Christmas show down just about every year. So
yeah,
I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've seen early on in spring. And I mean, we've got enough to kind of digest and chew on now, right? I mean, we've seen most of the pitchers we wanted to see. We've even seen our first round of cuts. Nothing to be surprised about there. That's a good place to start, though. Connor Griffin, the number one pick last year. Man, he really looked good. They put him at shortstop. They didn't put him at shortstop in the game. They had him in center field, but he looked great out there. I mean, he made a diving catch too, hustling, hit a home run. What do you think? Pretty impressive so far. Kid looks like a man.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he definitely has the athleticism and the build of a Major League Baseball player already at such a young age. He's only going to fine-tune that. I'm sure the team will make sure throughout his development, not only with his body, but also with his play, that he'll just turn into that kind of player. Now, obviously, he is still one of those guys where you wonder, where is he going to settle in? Is he going to be a shortstop? Is he going to be an outfielder? You never really know that. I mean, you're going to probably see a lot of that at the lower levels in like Greensboro and, of course, rookie ball. He's going to probably play 3 or 4 different positions, and it'll get talked about all the positions that he plays, but he'll eventually settle in somewhere. And you mentioned the outfield. I think that's going to eventually be his settling spot.
I think just from interviewing him, I think that's where his heart is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he can play shortstop. I really do.
Yeah, so do I. It kind of reminds me of how Henry was with the whole catching thing. He's like, this is what I do. I am a catcher. I am always going to be a catcher. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And that's kind of what Connor Griffin reminds me of. He's like, I want to be an outfielder. And just even with O'Neal Cruz, if he stays healthy and stays around long enough, I think that's a very fun fantasy to have with O'Neal Cruz and Connor Griffin in the same outfield. I just really hope his bat ends up being the highlight of his game, though, not the fact of how athletic he is and everything else that comes with him. I really hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all remember watching like Travis Swaggerty running back on balls in spring training and making these wild catches off the wall and getting excited about having a defender like that in the outfield. And man, it just never materialized. And it's a long trip here. Hopefully he flies through. And the bat carries him, but much like Termar Johnson, he tore it up in his first spring too. He kind of just showed us the bat right away. Sometimes there's setbacks, I mean, if everything goes great, that kid's here, you figure 1.5 levels at a time, 1.5 levels a year is a good clip. So 3 years, 2-3 years, maybe, before it's really a serious consideration. Well, it could be fun, though. Love the way that kid swings. Really, really looks natural as hell.
And I think the hope, too, is that the team is in a good enough spot to let, when he does arrive, he's more of like that complimentary top prospect piece rather than like the fantasy that we all want.
Yeah, like you're not trying to replace Barry Bonds with Jeff King. You're not trying to sell the fans Jeff King as a replacement for Barry Bonds, right?
Yeah, I mean, little before.
That's probably a little bit before your time.
Just a little. But yeah, I mean, I get the gist. You try to sell Jeff King to anybody at this point.
I'll drag your ass back to the early 90s, man. I mean, I will.
I love the early 90s. I read up on it all the time.
I'll have you listening to grunge and talking about 90s Pirates dreams like all the rest of us old people real soon. So Aside from Connor Griffin, let's talk about another prospect that I think has been really impressive so far. Shenshei Shang has really, really impressed me. The defense looks better. You remember, you and I actually went to a game together in Altoona, and we got to see him play, and we both were really underwhelmed by the range, right? We were both talking about how hard he was having a time getting towards the third base side. And the arm looked plenty strong. He just wasn't getting to the ball, right? But it looks different this spring. He really does look like he's worked on that first step. That's a lot better. The arm's plenty strong still, and the bat looks like it's come to play, man.
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden, it's not as silly having him on the 40-man, is it?
No, not really. And what is also hilarious to me, you brought up Termar. I think the Pirates have found a type. They like these shorter guys that have ungodly power that you just don't expect them to have. I think it's kind of nuts too, because you didn't really ever expect that from him when he was at the lower levels of the system. Then he gets to Altoona and all of a sudden he's starting to hit for power. And you're like, wait, that guy's hitting for power of all these people. And truthfully, we all know the defense is what you're hoping you can get from him at shortstop. It's been a position that the Pirates have struggled to find defense at for a very long time, which, again, I'll just throw something out there, too. It's something you even said on Twitter the other day. Nick Gonzalez is starting to find his way over there a little bit. And I think that's an interesting little talking point to have, Gary, because a lot of people just throw an IKF in that spot.
Well, maybe I'll tell you what, after we take a break, that's what we'll come back and talk about. We'll talk about Nick Gonzalez there a little bit. I just want to wrap up with Cheng because I know he's not going to make it out of camp. So I don't want anybody to take it like that. But this team, to me, desperately has to find somebody that can actually play this position. And it has to be somebody that comes up a lot quicker than what they have coming. You know, Leover Peguero is certainly still an option. But it's not looking good so far this spring. It's early. Could get better. But they don't have a real prospect. Geez, you really got to go to Griffin almost.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't really think there's anybody in between Chang and Griffin that you look at and say, yeah, that's the shortstop of the future.
Termar certainly can't play there.
No, it's too small.
I don't even know if he can play second, quite frankly. We'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see Chang do something though. I'm still very concerned about that position, but anytime I see something like that, and Dave White says Jeb. Yeah, Jeb's a long way away too, but he is closer than Griffin. So good point there, Dave.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's take a quick break and we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about what they could do at shortstop and what we are seeing at shortstop on the way there.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Ethan Smith, my old friend, former host of Locked On Pirates, and just in general, good dude, who still pitches in writing over at Steel City Pirates whenever he can find spare time. Welcome back to the show, sir. Let's talk about Nick Gonzalez a little bit, right? Shortstop, to me, is an open question. I never really believed that IKF was good enough to enter season as a starting shortstop. I'm kind of resigned to the fact that that's what they want to do, but I'm not happy with it. Okay. They seem to be showcasing Nick Gonzalez at shortstop a little bit here in spring. They did a little bit towards the end of last season too. I really, really, really like what I have seen from Nick Gonzalez at shortstop defensively. If the bat comes to play and Nick York's bat comes to play, isn't it going to be really, really hard to not start both of them and like use IKF a little differently?
Yeah, and a lot of people have also just looked at IKF and said, "Yeah, that's our guy." And speaking to what Bruce just said, he's a utility guy. And of all the positions that IKF has played in his career, I just think shortstop is probably the worst of them. Now, I am not saying that I would like IKF as an outfielder by any means, but he's definitely a better third baseman than he is a shortstop. He's a much better second baseman than he is a shortstop. And I think the fan base, and I'm assuming comments will agree with me here, would probably much rather see a Nick Gonzalez at shortstop, especially if the bat comes to play, like you said. And with Nick York as well, it's going to be hard to make those kind of decisions. But as you've told me many times in the past, aren't those kind of the decisions you want to make at this stage of this process? I mean, don't you want to have to make the decision of how are we going to use this guy that's hitting 260 versus this guy that's hitting 265 or 270? And truthfully, I don't know if IKF is doing that, Gary. I don't know if he's north of 250 this year.
Yeah, I mean, because I got to tell you, like, my worst fear is, on opening day to see IKF at shortstop and Adam Frazier at second base for a team that is, I think you could argue by doing what they've done this offseason, the only positive way you can sell it as trying is if you believe in the kids, right? If you believe in the kids, okay, I'll buy that you believe that's the way to get this job done. So you don't come out then and not show me the kids. You don't come out and show me like the pieces and parts that you went out and bought. You know what I mean? I can see starting the season with IKF at shortstop, backed by Nick Gonzalez, and let Nick York work his way into it. Let them prove that both of their bats need to be in the lineup all the time before you force it upon the world. I get that, maybe. But I just don't think we can get too far into a season with IKF and Adam Frazier playing the middle of our infield.
No. And then you're speaking to the utility guy thing. I don't think it's a great thing to have two utility players as your double play combo. I don't think you want that at this stage. And one of the biggest conversations I've had over the years on Locked On Pirates when I was hosting it was the amount of middle infielder prospects that this team has. I mean, Gonzalez, York, Baguero, Chang, all these guys that they're going to have. I was struggling at one point to find a spot for Termar Johnson. Not so much now. And that's the thing is you hope that you don't have this problem where you already are going to see a Tommy Pham probably starting the outfield this year. You don't want to have that problem with the infield. You just don't.
Like Dave White here says Frazier and IKF should both be released, but there's 7 million reasons why IKF will play. I get what you're saying, Dave. It's not quite that drastic with me about IKF. I think there is some value to him. I think he is a good utility player. I really do. For $7 million, he's probably a little pricey, but not as much as you'd think. That's a pretty good bench rule type player to have. Really a slick fielder at a lot of spots. Even at short, if you just had an emergency, it wouldn't be bad to have him and throw him over there. He's not going to kill you with the bat. He's going to get on base enough. He's not a star at the plate, and he never will be. He's not cut worthy either, though. There's a difference there, and I understand. Like, we just want to kind of have fun with it, but to me, I think there's a line there that needs drawn in the sand. They're not the same player here. No. Adam Frazier's at the end of his career and makes next to nothing, and you don't expect anything from him. So if he gets outplayed or injured like he already is right now, you move on from him.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any hard feelings on that either. It's like we already know where Adam Frazier is. If Tommy Pham gets outplayed by Jack Sawinski, yeah, he's not sticking around that long. You're just talking about two different stages of a career. I mean, IKF could.
Look, Jake Booth here. Tommy Pham is a clown.
Well, he's our clown now, so get
I
used
love it. I love it. I love it. I want you, Jake, to tell your brother. I hope he was able to see that interview with O'Neal Cruz the other day during the game where he was talking up Tommy Pham, talking about how long he's known him and how much he likes him and respects him. And I thought, my God, Josh's stomach must be turning upside down. Like inside of his chest right now, he's got this lump, probably welling up inside him. His hate for Tommy Pham is very real, so I get it. But
print the Tommy family shirts.
I honestly
for free.
I honestly think as the here's Josh just in time. The puke emoji never fails, and Jake Booth. Yeah, I did see that. I think by the time we get like halfway through the season, though, the way it's playing out, it feels to me like that's the way it's trending. Like they're gonna allow it to happen over time. I think they'll allow Nick Gonzalez and Nick York to kind of take those at bats over time. So I don't want to get too upset about it, like if it doesn't happen like on April 1st. But like I'm okay with it as long as they're allowing it to take nature's course. You know, those guys start showing you that they have to hit. Okay, then they have to play. That's what I'd be okay with that if that's how they took that path.
Yeah, I think you want it decided on the field now. You want results to define this team. I think that's the biggest thing that everybody's trying to take away going into this year is the last 4 years or 5 years, whatever. You know, the teams had their downfalls and their positives and their negatives and whatnot. Yeah, let those kind of define this team. Let the playing time be defined on the field, not by how much money a guy's making or whatever agenda they want to push or whatever you want to do. If Nick Gonzalez is outperforming Isaiah Counter-Falefa about a month and a half, maybe 2 months into the year, like you said, let nature play its course. Because I think Derek Shelton's smart enough. I don't want to go too far here, but I think he's smart enough to figure it out on his own that Nick Gonzalez will probably eventually be the better option than Isaiah Counter-Falefa at shortstop.
Yeah, I mean the weird thing about it is I'm not crazy about Nick Gonzalez at shortstop.
No.
I just think he's better there, and I think he's ultimately going to be a better stick. Those two things combined, I think, would win him that job. But it's not like a comfortable, like, we throw our hands up in the air and say shortstop is solved situation. I think we'd still kind of be pining for better defense there. And that kind of makes me, if I'm pushing for Nick Gonzalez to take over shortstop, that kind of makes me kind of question in my own head long term what I see for Nick Gonzalez, because I'd be constantly wanting better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I think on that same side of the field, Nick Gonzalez might get forced into it anyway if a Key Brian Hayes, who has an injury history, does go down, because then you wonder, do you stick IKF over there? Do you stick Jared Triolo over there? And that obviously opens up more spots elsewhere. Injuries will play a part in this too. It's all the factors we know about baseball, injuries, all kinds of different stuff. But I've liked what we've seen. I think it's okay in the same sentence to say you like what you have seen from Nick Gonzalez at the position, but it's not like the perfect fix. It's almost, and I don't even want to say it's just a Band-Aid over it, Gary, because that's implying that it's bad, because I don't think it's bad.
No, but it's definitely, it's filling a pothole with tar and chips as opposed to, fixing the road, right? So I mean, I think we'd always kind of be left wanting a little bit more. That said, I'm inclined to take it with a happy heart right now, because I think that would probably improve the team. I think it would improve the lineup, to be honest with you. So third base, you have Jared Triolo, you have Brian Hayes. Jared Triolo adds a little bit of mud to this middle infield situation, and maybe even a little bit of first base capability. So does Nick York. So there's a little bit of a mixture of who can do what over there and what value they can add at other positions. We haven't really seen them use Jared Triolo in the outfield. We know it's in his bag of tricks, but he's not hitting either. So is there a possibility that he ends up getting squeezed off of this team?
I could see it. It just kind of depends on where everything falls. I mean, you're going to have a backup catcher of some sort. It's probably Henry Davis at the moment, I would think. I don't think Endy's going to be ready just yet. We're probably going to mention this Altoona Curve game that me and Gary went to about 20 times on this show today. But yeah, I mean, Endy was still recovering from.
There's a reason we picked that game. I mean, it was Solomato, Chang was playing, Endy. Yeah, we wanted to see all that stuff.
And Adam Frazier is probably going to be somewhere involved in the bench or somewhere involved, and then you have to have an outfielder of some sort. That is.
Endy is hitting the hell out of the baseball, though.
Yes, he is.
He really is, and so is Henry. So. I mean, and Bart is. So, I mean, what a blessing all three of them are. They refuse to use Endy anywhere but for catcher right now. And that's part of his rehab. I think somebody actually even asked that in the chat. It's part of his rehab. And, I think that's typical when you're coming back from TJ. You want to keep, like, your arm motions consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, just right now, I think the Phillies are talking about moving Bryce Harper back to the outfield because he's fully recovered now from that. And they kind of just want the capability to do it. There was a whole story about it because it's one of those good guy Bryce stories that people write every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, Bryce will do anything for his team. Right. But he's willing to go back out in the outfield. And that just tells you like, oh, he's fully recovered. And like if Shohei Ohtani wasn't a DH, he would have been a DH anyway last year. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a lot of things like that. Endy, though, is starting to hit. And he's hitting from both sides of the plate, which is an interesting wrinkle there. You can't have all three of them up here and expect all three of them to only catch. Bart has never caught more than 100 games in a season. Don't expect him to this year. Feel like there's room for two. I really do. One of them is going to have to start in AAA. It's obviously going to be either Henry or Endy. I don't know how it's going to play out. I think Henry has been their best defensive catcher this spring.
Gary, I thought he was terrible at defense. That's what I heard like a year and a half ago. I thought that was like the worst thing ever is that Henry Davis couldn't play defense at all.
People argued with me about it even now. I mean, because they want to talk metrics and shit from spring. But, I mean, I'm seeing a pretty clean receiving of the ball. I'm seeing him blocking more balls in the dirt. I'm seeing him call a pretty good game. The few pitchers that actually give you the chance to do so anymore, since most of them wear those pitch comms on their belt. And, overall, I think he's got by far the strongest arm on the team right now. And he's firing balls and just drilling people on the base paths. So I think he is probably due another shot, but Endy is hitting his way into that being a decision, right? I mean, that's going to be interesting what they do there. What do you think?
Well, and like you said, the only way that all three of them are here is if they move one of them. And the only one they're moving is Endy Rodriguez. I would just say that right now. He's the only one that's moved around enough outside of whatever they were doing with Henry in the outfield a couple years ago. And that's something I've actually always wondered is Endy Rodriguez in small stints played the corner outfield, and it was never like brought up again. Like they never did it again. They never tried to do it again. And first base is another one that I'm like, I think he could do it. Now, as you mentioned, obviously you want to keep his arm moving. But again, these are the conversations we want to have. We don't want to be having this conversation on the other side of the coin where it's saying, well, Endy Rodriguez and Henry Davis aren't hitting for crap. So I guess we have to choose one of them just because we have to have a backup catcher behind Joey Bart. No, we want to be talking about Endy and Henry Davis playing well and the Pirates having to make a tough decision. That's what you want from this team at this stage of this process now. I know
that's probably the thing that floors me the most about doing this, whatever this is just how many people openly root against players to prevent there from being situations. Like, like you openly root against somebody that's trying to be a second baseman because he's not the second baseman you wanted to win. It's crazy to me. Like, if they're hitting, they're hitting. Like, if Adam Frazier had 7 home runs this spring already and like looks like he took steroids, and all of a sudden he's gonna be having one of those Derek Dietrich type seasons out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Guess who's gonna be completely happy about it? Me. I don't care whose growth it stunts. I don't give a crap. I just want to win baseball games.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be so weird to, like, there's going to be players that I think are major league players that get sent down this year. Yeah. We should take a break and talk about which ones we really think those are going to be. I'll tee you up for some of them, and we'll do a yay nay and talk about why we think they're really on the bubble, okay?
Sounds good.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. All this discussion we've done, we haven't even talked about where Andrew McCutchen's going to get at bats, because if those 3 catchers are tearing it up, guess what one of them's going to be? Like,
one of them has to be a DH at that point, right?
Yeah, it's going to be really, really difficult to talk about. I'm kind of just anxious to watch it play out, and it would be really cool if I did have to. It would be awesome if all 3 of them were awesome, and be great if you even thought that you could move one of them for meat at another position. Like, maybe you can get somebody's cast off, outfielder, or somebody's even decent outfielder with a couple years of control for one of those young catchers, or even Joey Bart at some point. It's going to be neat watching it develop, and I think it's cool. This is the year it kind of gets to happen, a year later than it should have if Andy had stayed healthy, right?
Yeah, and I vaguely remember having this conversation with you a while ago, and we were kind of getting ready for this. Whenever Andy and Henry were both coming up, a lot of people were wondering, even then, before Joey Bart was in the fold, how do you keep both of these guys, especially if you're going to keep them both as a catcher? And now you throw Joey Bart into the fold, who, mind you, by the way, I've gotten asked this question a lot. Joey Bart is the starting catcher of this team. I've gotten asked a lot, hey, do you think Henry Davis or Eddie Rodriguez could start over Joey Bart to begin the year? No. I don't know why I've gotten that question, but Joey Bart will be the starter. And let's also remind ourselves that one of the better acquisitions of the Ben Cherington era, Gary, is Joey Bart. And he didn't give up anything for him at all.
He's definitely like the Jason Grilli of this era, right? Yeah. Like the guy you just got off waivers that all of a sudden just rips it up. Yeah. But he's doing it this spring too, hitting for power. It looks good. I still don't like him behind the plate all that much. He'd be my DH choice out of the 3. But boy, that's coming like a freight train. Kind of really hoping I want to get there first before I start crowing about it, but really kind of hoping Kutch embraces what's coming. Because I don't want to see a messy divorce. I really don't. I don't want to see him thinking he has game left and the Pirates may agree but don't have room for it. So I would kind of hope that it just ends on amicable terms here. But we'll see. Yeah.
I mean, hey, if you ask some of the fan base, Gary, he can still play the outfield. I mean, just stick him out there somewhere. Get him his at-bats in a left field,
Yeah, that ain't.
Everybody would love that.
That ain't happening. Okay, let's talk about guys that, probably have a really good shot of starting in AAA. But I think they're kind of showing some chops that most years we would have been clamoring for them to get a shot, right? People are going to hate the name right away, but I'm going to do it. It's got to be his last opportunity too. G1 Bay.
Oh, absolutely.
G1 Bay has been tearing it up. And I'm not just talking his home run the other day. Swing's different. Definitely has changed his swing. It's not as traditionally Korean as it has been. And I think it's actually really good for the kind of game that he needs to play. So it's resulting in the line drives. Still don't think he gets a good jump at first base to utilize his speed, so he's still not going to steal a lot of bases. I just don't believe it. He's fast. He just is not a base stealer in my mind, at least not at this level. Center field, he says it's coming along. The coaches say it's coming along. I haven't gotten to see it yet, so I can't speak to that at all. Coaches probably would say that whether it was or wasn't, right? So I don't know. And you don't really need a starting center fielder, but maybe they're fine with Bay being a guy that would rot on the bench and just be an extra outfielder. They don't have the dimension that he has, the speed. Maybe Billy Cook has that kind of speed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like in the same conversation of speed, but not G1 Bay speed. But biggest question I have with G1 Bay at this point is where do you play him? I mean, I know that's the biggest question. Yeah, if he starts hitting, you have to figure it out. I mean, if he's going to hit like that, hit like he has, yeah, that's something you have to figure out. It's just a matter of where do you feel comfortable with him playing defensively? And my answer to that is nowhere. So that's really the biggest kind of hurdle for me is one, can he do this in the regular season? In his last shot, I agree with you 100%. This is it for him, at least in Pittsburgh. And if he's not hitting, he just doesn't bring any value.
I think he probably is a major leaguer. Yeah. Like if it's his last shot in Pittsburgh, I bet he gets a shot somewhere else, and I think he probably breaks through if it's the right team. He's late enough in his career that he's probably a guy that could find his way to latch on to a team after being picked up as like an NRI or something. Mm-hmm. You could see it, at least. I think the talent is there. Just the Pirates have never been able to unlock it, and maybe this is the year that they change the way that they're having him approach things at the plate. That's important. And the outfield, if it really does come along and he can turn into a productive outfielder, he's probably a decent player at some point. The contact is certainly different this spring, though. It really is. A lot more behind it than there used to be.
Well, and I think the biggest question I could ask you, Gary, is what do you think his ceiling in Pittsburgh would be? I think that's like a massive question at this point. It's like, what is the ceiling of G1 Bay in Pittsburgh?
I mean, I would tell you like that he doesn't have a path, but until they fill the outfield position, like they have to have a fourth outfielder. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to be either somebody they get if that Bigfoot actually exists, or it's going to be Jack Sawinski, who is also hitting. We'll get to him later. Or there's a possibility of Palacios. And if you consider him, you got to consider Bay.
Yeah.
And Bay's hitting. And they played him in left field the other day. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that he has to be exclusively a center fielder. That means that they're not as afraid of him catching the balls that are tailing away from him or towards him. So we'll see what happens. I mean, if the bat ever turns up, boy, that's a heck of a player.
Yeah.
I think for me, what people do with a lot of these players is, well, it's a lot like our politics, really, in this world. You pick one side and decide that they can do no right, and then no matter what they decide to do, you have to take the polar opposite approach because you have to be as completely different from them as possible. And before you know it, you're taking the side of some pretty crazy things. So when I watch players, I tend to try to like not come down on the side of they can't make it. You know what I mean? As long as as long as there's still a chance, I kind of tend to leave the door cracked for them. I guess is what I'm saying.
It's like Motel 6, Gary. You leave the light on for him.
What about Leo Peguero? He is off to a terrible start. He had an awful game defensively the other day.
Yeah, he did.
That could be a lot of things. Infield suck sometimes in this league. I didn't see that. I didn't hear that. But what do you do about Peguero? I mean, this is last chance cafe for him too. You can't have him on the 40-man 4 straight years without bringing him up and giving him a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, are we getting to the point where they might remove him? He's only 24. You know,
you have to explore a trade at least, right? Before you just get rid of the guy, I would think. I mean, he's a guy I think that would have value somewhere, much like you said with Ji-Hwan Bae. I think he's that kind of guy where if you trade him to the right place or he ends up in the right place, I think he could be something. And I've always thought he could be something because I was very high on the kid when he was in Altoona and Greensboro. I thought he was going to be a second baseman or a shortstop, clear cut. We remember that was kind of the conversation. It was Nick Gonzalez and Leo Peguero. That was what we kind of expected. It just mattered on which position each of them was going to play. Now you kind of wonder, where is he?
Leo Peguero just hit a home run off a 33-year-old who hasn't made his debut yet. So
did Drew Maggi get into pitching?
Thank you, Josh, for that.
Nice.
I mean, good for him. Great, late inning home run. But it's not about results in spring as much as it is just in general what you've seen from him. And I just don't think we've seen a lot from him. I certainly don't think you've seen enough from him to threaten making this team on opening day.
No.
There's too many other options there. And I fear there's going to be too many layers of options for him to ever break through, really, this year.
Well, yeah, because then you have the threat potentially of a Termar Johnson. Yeah, I really think Termar late in this season could make a push for it if he plays well enough. So where does that leave Leo Peguero? And then we mentioned Mitch Jebb earlier. Where does that leave him when he eventually comes up? And if you're having that conversation, I don't think he would be around at that point once Connor Griffin is ready if they decided to put him at shortstop.
And that's all if Nick York isn't a stud there.
Yeah, and then Chang, who you mentioned earlier, who's outplaying him right now in spring. It's kind of tough for him right now. It really is.
It's tough. It's tough to think of a way that he could possibly make the team. Josh Palacios is another one that I think he's at least a quad A player, right? I don't know that he's necessarily a major leaguer in another team, but he certainly isn't going to be one here. I don't think there's a shot in hell of him making this team. Not out of camp anyway.
Where are his options at, minor league wise? Does he have any left?
I don't even know. I don't know that I care either.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that because I don't even know if that's an option. That's another thing, folks, that you got to remember too with some of this stuff is that comes into play with a lot of this different stuff is, so-and-so is out of minor league options. Yeah, they are on their last shot because then you're hoping they get through that process.
No, he has no options left. I still don't see him making the team.
I don't.
So he'll probably clear waivers.
I would think so.
I would think that time of year, like end of spring, a guy like him probably squeaks through, right? Mm-hmm. Most of what you won't get squeaked through are like relievers, I would say.
Yeah.
So if you're dumb about that, like we'll lose Carson Fulmer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like somebody like I don't know, Starucki or something like that. Somebody that doesn't matter. I'm trying to think of major leaguers. The next one is obviously Jack.
Oh, absolutely.
Jack's been hitting, man. He looks different. Does look like he's taking a different approach at the plate. Swung at the first pitch a couple times already this spring, which is something that I just never saw him do last year. So that's pretty nice. I've liked what I've seen from Jack. A little bit of displays of power, shown a willingness to adjust with two strikes and look for contact. and he's succeeded in getting that contact a couple times up the middle and off to left field. So if that's the kind of Jack that you might, he's hitting off lefties too, which is crazy. If that's the kind of Jack you're going to get, first of all, does that change the team's urgency to get another left fielder? Should it change the team's urgency to get another left fielder? And is it enough for him to make it north with the team?
I would think that if you're writing off Palacios, especially with how the outfield is constructed currently with Reynolds, Cruz, and Pham, I do think that Sawinski would probably be the first option you would have for an outfielder in that case. Yeah, Billy Cook, I think you have to throw his name in here too, obviously, just because I think Billy Cook has some potential as well. But with Jack Sawinski, I mean, I think the biggest thing you're looking for is consistency. He's shown the flashes. I mean, we've seen him do what he can do. It was 2023, correct, where he had 26 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen it happen. It's not like this thing where we're all making it up that, oh, we think Jack Sawinski can hit 25 homers. We've already seen him do it. It's just a matter of he has to go up to the plate and be more consistent. He can't have these.
It's so impossible to trust. You can't trust it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And what he does in spring doesn't necessarily make you believe any more than not, right? But Jack can play everything out there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably got the best arm aside from Palacios. Really, Palacios has a great arm.
Mm-hmm.
But Jack has a really good arm. He can make the throws. He's faster than most of them. So if he gets better breaks, he's pretty good. Center field's probably his weakest position. He won't really be asked to do that much, I would think, except for when he's backing up the position.
Mm-hmm.
Jack makes a lot of sense if they don't make a move. If they do make a move, I wonder how long they can hold off Jack if he keeps hitting like this in the minors. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and one thing too with him as well is it's like, again, we've seen him have the hottest of hots and the coldest of colds. So you almost wonder, okay, he's doing this in spring. Let's say he does go north, starts the season well, so they hold off making that decision to get another outfielder. But then he has one of those 1 for 33 spurts again. Then you're looking around, twiddling your thumb, saying, okay, well, what player are we getting? It's almost like, for all my Marvel fans, it's almost like Moon Knight with all the different characters. You just don't know which one you're getting. I mean, you don't know which guy you're talking to or which guy at the plate you're going to get. But you mentioned the lefties thing. I think that is huge for him. It's a lot like O'Neal Cruz last year where he looked horrible against them. And then we walked out of the season saying, wait, he's not a liability against those anymore.
That's a great point.
If Jack cannot be a liability anymore against left-handed pitching, that instantly, to me, puts him in that spot because it just changes everything about the construction of how they do things out there.
That's a great point. And I mean, I would expect them to straight platoon the position with Pham. That's fine. That's fine entirely. I don't think you have to worry about that as a bad thing or anything. But Jack is, man, he's crucial to this team if he can hit. Crucial. Here's the other thing though, man. Like another player that I think is pushing to make this team, and I'm just struggling like hell to find a place for him, is Billy Cook. I am intrigued by the bat. I love his defense in the outfield. I know I just said Palacios, but Billy Cook has a hell of an arm. It's a really good range too. He's probably their best center fielder right now.
Yeah.
You know, I know O'Neal Cruz has that on lockdown, but he's probably their best center fielder right now too. I really don't see him making the team. I just don't know where he makes it. Like I thought maybe first base, but they've barely been playing him there. And I don't know. What do you think?
I think you would be asking for Billy Cook to jump multiple players to make this team. Like I think over the next 2 weeks, he would have to like be tearing the cover off the ball, playing the exact same defense that he has been. And it looks like our buddy told us over there that he just robbed a home run in center, according to Alex Stump. So I guess if we just keep mentioning players are going to do good things. Gary, I don't know if we need to mention past players that might just rise from the dead and come up to the plate and hit a home run.
Zombie players.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're going to get like Bill or Honest Wagner all of a sudden just going to rise from the dead. But anyways.
It's a good point here. Like from DJ, whatever. Don't they need a righty to spell Cruz in center? And yeah, you're right about that. I don't think they can carry 5 outfielders though.
Yeah, because then you're having the same conversation with Pham and Sawinski and left.
So you'd have to have Billy Cook be able to pick up some first base time too, right? Again, I'm starting to find ways to threaten Triolo's roster spot.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because part of me wants to see Nick York and Billy Cook make this team. I think it's a much more dynamic bench. They can do a lot more things with their lineup if they have both of those guys here. I'm intrigued by them, and in the short term before you get Horwitz back, really what you're looking for is who's going to be the left-handed first baseman.
Yeah.
Is that your buddy DJ?
DJ Stewart, huh? Yeah. Hey, I mean, he started off really hot. I mean, I was thinking, oh, Lord, here we go. DJ Stewart fast track to opening day. Don't forget Derek Hall in this mix either. I don't know what he's been doing. So I doubt that even happens at all either.
Hey, they gave Jack a first baseman mitt too.
I would love that, honestly.
Yeah.
I was even going to mention it a little bit when I was talking about him, but I would love that. I really would. I think the only thing I would hate about it is it would limit the defensive upside that you get with Sawinski. I think it would limit his athleticism a bit much being at that position, but you would also be adding power to that position, or at least a power upside to it, or hope of an upside. And who knows? I mean, then if Jack does go off and take it into the season and play first base like that, suddenly your problem over there isn't as much of a problem.
That would actually be interesting. If I guess then you have the situation of if Horwitz works out, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff anymore, right? So this season's going to be interesting for him. If he can prove that he's a valuable bat, maybe we can stop pining for a first baseman all the time, right? And then you don't have to worry about sticking anybody there. It seems like Brian Reynolds has given up on that thought altogether now.
That was so fun. That was such a fun saga. I was like, you know what? I'm all for it. Why not? Throw him over there. And now it's just like, okay, now we're just dropping it. It just isn't happening.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they have that Valdez kid that's hanging around. He's played a little bit of second base. He can play a little bit outfield. He can play first base. He's hit for some power this spring. I like the bat. He's got a little bit of a history of some pop in the bigs as well. That might not be the worst guy in the world to try, if he were to make the team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much they're actually considering him. I kind of can't get a handle on what they want to do with him.
Neither can I.
But he's an interesting lefty. DJ Stewart started out really, really good, and I think it got some people excited, but he's cooled off significantly. Had a couple pretty significant bats yesterday, actually, with a lot of men on base. So I don't know. I might be turning back into a pumpkin, but the power is very real. He can get into baseballs. He can.
Who was the player, Gary, that everybody wanted up here last year? He's not. I don't think he's with the team anymore. He's like 31, and everybody thought he was a prospect.
Oh, Jake Lamb.
Yeah, Jake. Yeah. I think DJ Stewart is the 2025 Jake Lamb of this team. Like everybody saw him and was like, "Oh, that's our guy," and then he just turned back into DJ Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat. Nobody in particular. Lots of people talking about guys with options. That stuff's a factor for sure. It's a factor. It's not the ultimate decision maker for this team. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think that there are too many guys like that they're gonna worry that much about losing if they have to try to pass them through waivers to throw them in the minors. They've got duplication of effort on a lot of these guys, and I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I really don't.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to factor in too with these decisions is there are two sides to this. I mean, there's two parties. There's the player and a team that wants said player. Just because the player is on waivers doesn't mean any of the other 29 teams want anything to do with it. So
it also doesn't mean that they can't get traded off of
Yeah.
waivers, which is usually
Yeah.
what would happen with a situation like that.
Well, that's what I wonder with a guy like Palacios is do you just end up offloading him for cash considerations if you have to? Or is that
It could
like,
very well end up like that, or he could clear waivers and just wind up back in AAA, and it's not that big of a deal. I think that's probably the most likely scenario for a lot of them. I've really liked Valdez, though. I'd rather not think about like him having to be cut and lost for nothing right yet. He does have a slim path to make this team, though. Let's not lie to ourselves.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess don't play your violin about his options to me, because you ain't gonna just make the team for free. And I think they would try to pass him through waivers now as opposed to after Horwitz is healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, because then you really would lose him for sure. I think you do it with the flood of other people that are getting cut, and you got a chance to slide them through. I personally think Valdez has too many home runs in the league to ever slide through, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I mean, he could make the team. First base is kind of it right now, right? I mean, because if you're using a lefty at second and he's healthy, it's probably Frazier, right?
Yeah. And you know what this conversation reminds me of a lot is when O'Neal Cruz came back last year and you had all those middle infielders all gunning for spots, but only one spot to put them, which was second base. That's kind of the same thing you have going on here. Yeah, there's Billy Cook and Valdez and Stewart and all these other guys. There's only one spot to put them. You can only put them at first base. And we would love to be able to put 5 guys at first base. Be great. Nothing would ever get down the line ever. I mean, you wouldn't have to worry about defense at second base at that point, but you can't do that. And it goes back to what we said earlier about catcher. You eventually run into this problem where you have too many guys for one position, and it's a good problem to have. We didn't even mention pitchers. You didn't mention one pitcher in that whole list, and you mentioned probably about 8 or 9 different players.
Well, the funny thing is, we have probably, you and I especially, and me and Jim, for that matter, have probably had this same conversation just about every spring. To lesser degree of worrying about losing guys. It was more just guys you'd want to stick around. We're talking about people that actually kind of might have MLB futures at this point that we'd be cutting loose. And I think the main thing to say is most of the time, these problems really do take care of themselves. You think you have too many of something, you really don't. The starting pitching, I think, is going to be the shining star example of that whole thing this whole year. You're starting right now thinking that you have such an excess that Ben Cherington is derelict of duty by not trading from it for more offense. I can definitely see that point. I can also see us getting about 6 or 7 deep into that depth chart of pitchers making debuts and trying to stick up here to fill a hole for an injury and getting real frustrated about how thin they feel all of a sudden.
Yep.
I think a lot of people forget the path for some of these guys. Like some of you would probably tell me now that Mitch Keller isn't good yet. I get that. That's exactly why I try not to hold grudges against players, because once you've come out and said something like he stinks forever, there's nothing there, get rid of him, you leave yourself absolutely no room to be open-minded about anything you see from the guy ever again, right? But Mitch Keller was highly touted, and he is a well-oiled machine through the minors that was ready to go by all accounts. And it took him years to latch on here. I'm not saying that I predict that for guys like Bubba, but let's just remind ourselves how freakish what Paul Skeens and Jared Jones did before we start doing math that doesn't really add up.
Yeah.
Okay? For what we actually have. You get what I mean?
Well, yeah, because I mean, I think most people right now would look at the starting rotation and say, okay, you're set there. And no injuries, you're set there for now. Then you have Johan Oviedo, who is injured right now, but we'll see what goes on with that. But you look at, the depth chart, right, in the minors, and most people tell you, oh, they have Chandler, Harrington, Barco, Solometto. That's a whole nother rotation. Folks, I'm going to be honest with you. If you get one or two of those guys to work out for you, you're walking out of that pretty damn happy. And
yeah,
you have given yourself a very, 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 very good dice roll that it happens, because I think Bubba Chandler is better than Jared Jones. I'll come out and say it right now. I think he's better than Jared Jones. Does that mean he's going to be Jared Jones right when he comes up here? Maybe, maybe not. But now that we've all seen Paul Skeens come out there and throw lights out and start in the All-Star game, the bar's been set up here. I also am a firm believer that's just going to make these guys better, because they're going to want to try to get to that level. Are they going to be able to do it? Absolutely not. But it's fun to me because you're going to just have competition everywhere. And I think that just inherently is going to make these guys play better, because all this conversation we just had about all these positions and pitching and all this stuff, I really do think that all of that is just going to make the players better, because they know that they can't just sit on their butt and say, oh, I could hit 220 and keep my job. No, you can't. By the way, no.
You don't think they should have signed? Like Bruce Nesbitt says, signing Frazier and Pham really hurt these younger guys' chances. Both signings were unnecessary. So you disagree with that?
Pham, I disagree hardly, because they needed an outfielder bad. I mean, if we don't sign sorry, I'm not on the team. If they don't sign Tommy Pham, folks, I don't think me and Gary are even having a conversation about Jack starting in left field. Take that as you want. But I think he already has that position on lock if Tommy Pham isn't here.
I mean,
Adam Frazier, on the other hand, I think is a little, I don't know. I think, yeah, you can make that argument, because then you're thinking Triolo's probably definitely on the team. And
I guess I got to be real. Like, the Tommy Pham signing, I understood. It's a right-handed bat in the outfield. The beginnings of seasons, if he's going to hit, he does. You might be able to trade him for something decent. They claim to like the attitude. I can justify the Tommy Pham signing. Earmuffs, Josh. And now the Adam Frazier, though, I struggle. I don't see it.
Yeah.
To me, the Valdez move was a move to address that left-handed reliever or infielder that you were looking to have on your bench.
Yeah.
They already had the guy. So I don't understand the Adam Frazier signing. Now he's hurt. Like, I apparently they're not like reporting it, but he hasn't played like since the second game of the spring. So there's something going on. If that lingers, I mean, I guess he'll kind of just fade away, and maybe pop back in at some point. But like, I felt like they had already taken care of that position. And I like his upside a hell of a lot more than I like what I think Adam Frazier has left. So I guess I just didn't understand that signing. I still don't understand that signing. Is it blocking kids? I guess, but it's blocking. It's like blocking my cats from a room with a cardboard box. They're going to get in. I mean, like, if the kids are hitting, that paltry amount of payroll isn't even going to keep the Pirates from moving on.
Yeah, I was going to say,
if anything, it'll ensure he clears waivers.
Well, let's also not act like Adam Frazier is 2021 All-Star Adam Frazier anymore.
Oh, I don't think anyone is.
Yeah, and I know, but the main point that I'm making there is I don't think it's going to be all that difficult for Adam Frazier to get outplayed. So I don't think you're going to have to really worry about this too long. I
feel like he's going to be a bench guy. I really do. And they'll just throw him out there really wherever they have like a need. He's a Sunday lineup guy, maybe.
And I think that brings up a good point too, Gary. Would you rather one of these guys be a bench bat that doesn't get to play a lot, or would you rather them get a bunch of at-bats in AAA and then come up and prove themselves?
I'd rather not clog the whole team to not leave room for any of that to happen. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to have left a slot. The funny thing is, we're talking about like they still might even stuff it further. They might throw another player out there. To me, it's got to be a player of a certain level or don't do it. Like if it's a player that's for sure starter, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Like even if it's Verdugo, that's better than what they have on paper right now and much more major league experience from the left side, no matter what you think. They get that guy. I'm not going to have any bitches that he's holding anyone back. That's a legitimate major league player. Cool. I get it. You bring in guys like Adam Frazier, though, I don't need depth at this point. We've grown depth. Like, you could have used G1 Bay for depth. We just talked about, like, here's a guy like that really doesn't have a position and shit. Well, keep him on your bench. You don't have to care about at-bats for him anymore. You're going to lose him at this point. Mm-hmm. So, like, bring him up here and use him to pinch run and start the odd game in center field here and there when O'Neill needs a break, or you want to DH O'Neill. Do something creative. This team never does that. They'd rather go out and sign recyclables.
Yeah.
That's what's frustrating to me.
Yeah, and I think in going back to that question, I think Tommy Pham even is a recyclable, but for what they needed, I get it. I actually understand why they did that one. Like at first, when I saw the Adam Frazier signing, I said, "Oh, this is cool. He's coming back to where he last was an all-star and had some success and broke the spring training batting average record and did all this other stuff and was a cool little story." And mind you, also got us back some decent stuff from the Padres. But I didn't understand it now. Like we're having this conversation and it's like, yeah, it's cool that he's there. You hope he does well. Like this goes back to what you said. We're not going to actively root against the guy, but he's kind of just there at this point as filler. You just hope that that filler is like a tasty chocolate inside the cookie and not like raisins.
Yeah, I felt like I traveled back in time, like a really shitty version of Hot Tub Time Machine, and to a time that I didn't really want to remember. I didn't need to call back on that era of Pirates baseball, really, for nostalgia. So, I don't know. I'm not excited about that signing. I also don't think it's a contract they can't get out of, should they want to. So I don't care all that much. Anyways, Ethan, this was a lot of fun, brother. Really nice to hear from you. Thank you for pinch hitting for Jim.
No problem.
Anything you want to tell the folks?
Just ready for Pirates baseball to be back. I'd probably plan on being at every Saturday home game this year. So
awesome, brother. Definitely see you around. Throw down a few mangoes, right?
Absolutely. Still drinking them. Even in this cold weather, I still drink them.
And you are my Altoona buddy for sure. We're definitely doing Altoona games.
Oh, and a fun fact before we go, and I'm sure she'll listen to this. My aunt has never been to one. And I won't tell her about a certain thing in center field that I also didn't know about before I went that I was very flabbergasted by and very happy about. So she now is wondering what it is and even trying to scour the internet for it and can't find it. So I'm like, yeah, that'll also be happening to where she'll get introduced to one of the best traditions in minor league baseball.
Oh, good. Nobody break the secret to her if they see her. That's good stuff, man. That'll be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll take an old Pirates Fan Forum road trip out there. Maybe we'll buy up a little block of seats and have a bunch of people come out to Altoona game. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
You see if I can magically make some money this summer and do something cool like that for everybody. All right, everybody. Without further ado, I think I'm gonna let Ben, neither of our son, but somehow he's still gonna be on the show today, say goodbye to everybody. And let's go Bucks. Let's start letting spring take over a little bit. I'm liking what I'm seeing from a lot of the pitching staff. It's going to be a fun season one way or another, no matter what you thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah.
Let's go Bucks!
Yeah, buddy.